Welcome back to the TwinSpires Racing Roundtable. I'm Ashley Anderson here with James Scully and Vance Hanson, and today we'll be exploring potential Breeders' Cup prospects, the turf action at Colonial and Kentucky Downs, and other notable performances from this weekend. And let's start with two juveniles who dominated this weekend in Prince of Monaco and Tamara. Which one do you think is the better Breeders' Cup prospect at the moment? We'll start with James.
Tamara. I think Tamara's the right answer. She looks like a top-class talent. She stumbled out of the starting gate from the rail post in her debut and won going away and really just took it to another level in the Del Mar debutante. She's the fourth full from four-time champion and Hall of Famer Beholder. Don't always see these real top-class race mares produce offspring that are the same kind of talents, but Tamara certainly looks like it. She's named for Tamara Gustafson, who owns and runs Spendthrift with her husband, Eric, the daughter of the late B. Wayne Hughes. And, you know, obviously she's got bright work and ways and means, like waiting in the wings, potentially from the East Coast and maybe others. But she's like she's the real deal and will take some beating in the juvenile fillies, in my estimation. Prince of Monaco definitely was good in the Del Mar Derby. The Del Mar Futurity, and obviously with the hopeful sort of coming back slow, the competition might not be as stiff on the East Coast in the 2-year-old division, but I do think some more 2-year-olds will emerge over the next couple of months for the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. We saw some real nice maiden winners that will make their stakes debut before that. So I'm going to go with Tamara, Vance.
Yeah, these two horses look superior to their divisional peers at this moment, but I do agree with you that Tamara, I think, is the stronger contender for her race, the juvenile fillies. As you alluded to, she is out of Beholders, who was not only a 4-time champion, but also a 3-time Breeders' Cup winner. And so just the fact that she could emulate her dam by winning the same race as Beholder did is something that we're going to be concentrating a lot on and talking a lot about heading into the Breeders' Cup. Tamara obviously took a huge step forward off of her debut win to win the debutante in the style that she did. And meanwhile, Prince of Monaco, that race on the futurity on paper looked like it was going to be a very lopsided result, but as it turned out, it was more of a workmanlike performance from Prince of Monaco over a stablemate named Miramati, who was still a maiden. So we saw the best of Prince of Monaco so far in the Best Pal 2 starts back at Del Mar. We didn't see his best in the futurity. He probably can do better than that approaching the juvenile. But to me, Tamara, she's one of the headline stories of this year's Breeders' Cup for sure. How about you, Ashley?
Well, Tamara's pedigree is certainly enticing, as you all have mentioned, out of Beholder, who won twice in the Breeders' Cup Distaff, also the Breeders' Cup Juvenile fillies for Spendthrift and Richard Mandela, the connections of Tamara. And, Richard Mandela is a 3-time winner of the Breeders' Cup Juvenile fillies as well. But as you mentioned, James, the ways and means and bright work in that division, I'm a little hesitant to say that Tamara is going to come out and dominate and beat those 2 fillies. And I do think, the competition right now with Prince of Monaco, he'll probably face a couple stablemates in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. Bob Baffert's a 5-time winner of the Breeders' Cup Juvenile as well. So I'm giving Prince of Monaco the slight upper hand over Tamara just because of the division, or just because of the competition. At the moment, Fierceness, I think could be one to watch in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. 101 on debut, won by more than 11 lengths for Todd Pletcher, but again, just looking at the other horses, Nutella Fellow winning the hopeful as a 54-1 long shot. Just don't think that's a horse we have to really consider for the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. So for me, just barely Prince of Monaco at the moment. Let's move over.
I think it's a situation where both of them could win. So you're sort of splitting it a little bit with that.
Let's move over to the turf races at Colonial and Kentucky Downs. We had a number of stakes this weekend. What were your takeaways from those races? We'll go with Vance.
Yeah, on Saturday at Kentucky Downs, the races to a large degree were dominated by speed horses. There was obviously a bias going on for most of the card at Kentucky Downs. So it was either kind of speed dominated or horses that were actually course specialists and had won over that course before. So I don't know how much of an impact a lot of those races will have on, say, the Breeders' Cup coming up. So I'm going to go over to Colonial Downs, and to me, the standout performance on that card and on both cards, actually, for me, was Integration's victory in the Virginia Derby. I mean, this was a second start horse running against a grade one winner in program trading who had won the Saratoga Derby. Now, granted, Integration went off as the second choice, but that was not an incredible training job and a strong feat for Hall of Famer Shug McGaughey to throw this horse, who was just coming off a maiden win at Colonial the month before, into the Virginia Derby, and he won stylishly. I mean, he convincingly defeated program trading, who was 3 for 3 going into the race. And not only that, Integration broke the course record for a mile and an eighth at Colonial. So this is a 3-year-old to keep an eye on for the rest of the fall. You know, I've looked at the calendar ahead. I mean, there's races like the Jockey Club Derby at Aqueduct, Hill Prince also at Aqueduct, and the Hollywood Derby at the end of the season, a grade one at Del Mar. So those are some potential targets, I think, for Integration in the coming months. And he's going to be an exciting horse to watch for the rest of the year. How about you, James?
Well, I agree with what Vance said about Kentucky Downs on Saturday. I'll give some credit to those winners. You know, a lot of them had to dig down deep to win, but they got the right trip on a course that got some rain Thursday night, maybe overnight into Friday, and then was listed as firm, but it definitely was a speed favorite, as you'll see. I'll mention some horses that I thought ran well that got beat. Moselle in the juvenile turf, Sparkle Blue in the ladies turf, One Timer an Olympic runner in the turf sprint, and of course Wakanaka in the ladies turf. All those horses really ran well from off the pace and didn't win, but I'm going to upgrade their performances, even though they didn't get the job done, because I thought they were running against the bias. And I mean, I'm going to echo your comments for the most part about Integration. I'm listening to your future plans, and I'm not hearing any Breeders' Cup turf in there. And that's the part, I think, where we will differ. Quality Road Colt out of a mare Harmonized that was a grade one winner at a mile and an eighth, won graded stakes up to a mile and 3/8. You look at this female family, Ashley and Vance, it is loaded with classy mile and a half turf horses. Longer distances are going to be no problem whatsoever for Integration. And sometimes we get to the Breeders' Cup and it's just these horses are in the right place at the right time. We've seen 3-year-olds like Magician and Conduit that, you know, I don't think anybody really gave a shot to win the Breeders' Cup turf at this time of year. And they just got better at leading into the Breeders' Cup and ran their race. And I'm not counting it out for Integration. I'm looking forward to that next race. If he wins that impressively, I think he's in the Breeders' Cup. He deserves a shot at the Breeders' Cup turf. He'd have a chance to win it. Ashley, what do you think?
Well, I wanted to note the Franklin Simpson at Kentucky Downs this weekend. We had Private Creed come out and win his first graded stakes, and also first win 6 starts in 2023. He rallied to beat Playlist, a filly who Private Creed won by 2 1/4 lengths. This is a Steve Asmussen runner, and he had won 2 previous listed stakes in 2022. Last year was third by a length in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf Sprint to Mischief Magic and Dramatize, pointed toward the Breeders' Cup now, but don't think this is a horse that, you know, is going to be able to compete with the other horses in that Breeders' Cup Sprint race. But, you know, looking at the second and third place finishers, actually was more interested in their finishes in this race. You had Playlist, the only filly in the field, was actually pointed toward the Music City Stakes, didn't make the field, so Wesley Ward put her in this race, and she was very competitive against the boys. And then we also had Sweet Cherry Pie, went off as the post-time favorite, finished third by 4.5 lengths, but this was his first turf start. Thought he looked pretty good for his first turf start. His last start was supposed to be on turf. It was taken off the turf and then came out here, first race on grass. I think he has a lot of upside going forward as well. What do you all think about Playlist? Were you surprised to see her come in second, or did you think she'd be up there?
I think she's an up and coming filly for Wesley Ward. I think she was like it's 6th in upper stretch, so had some work to do, and you know it was hard to make up ground in the final furlongs, and she ran a really good second. So I do like her moving forward for Ward.
All right. Were there any other performances that caught your all's eye this weekend, James?
Well, I just want to mention from the weekend, it just, for whatever reason, Kentucky Downs has these 2 big weekends. And the first one was the Saturday of Labor Day, and then the second one was this past weekend. And for whatever reason, I think this timing of the first weekend works better for getting Breeders' Cup horses. I will give credit to Astaire, who won the Sunday's Juvenile Fillies turf on the front end. She could be a Breeders' Cup Juvenile turf contender for Brendan Wall. She is one, I think. But otherwise, I think if you look at that first weekend, you had Ancient Rome and the Magic Millions. This is a multiple Group 1 place colt that had back class. It's like rounding back into form. He should be targeting the last 3 winners of the Mint Millions, which was run on this last weekend. They switched the timing of that race last 2 years. That race hasn't produced any Breeders' Cup Mile starters. This year, I think it will with Ancient Rome. And I'll even mention Anglefile and Far Bridge from the Dueling Grounds Derby. I think they could be Breeders' Cup types potentially. So I just think that next year, Kentucky Downs should think about running the Mint Millions, the Kentucky Turf Cup, the ladies Turf Sprint, and the Turf Sprint on that first weekend, maybe get a little bit better fields, because ultimately what they're trying to do down there in Franklin, Kentucky is get Breeders' Cup horses to prep there for these big money events. And for whatever reason, it just seems like the timing works better the first weekend than the second for Breeders' Cup horses, Ashley and Vance.
Yeah, my top performances over the weekend, anybody who watched the Irish Champions weekend and at the Leopardstown and the Curragh, and then the Arc Trials at Longchamp in France on Sunday, kind of got a sneak preview of what I think is going to be the impending European dominance of the Marquis Breeders' Cup turf races. Auguste Rodin rebounded from a bad defeat in the King George and won the Irish Champion. His stablemate filly Warm Heart won the Prix Vermeil at Longchamp on Sunday. And then we saw the superstar 3-year-old filly Myler Tahira come back from her summer break and impressively win the matron at Leopardstown on Saturday. Now, all 3 of those horses, I think, are now in serious discussion for coming over for the Breeders' Cup at Santa Anita. And to me, I think they're going to be very, very difficult horses to beat. All of them enjoy fast, firm ground. And that I think that's actually going to sway at least a couple of them away from going to, say, the Arc de Triomphe next month, as well as, say, the Champion Stakes or the QE2 at Ascot. So, yeah, anybody making the trek to Southern California for the Breeders' Cup, you don't want to miss this potential star power you're going to possibly see with Warm Heart. Probably, maybe in the filly and mare turf, Auguste Rodin in the turf, and then Tahira. I think she'll cut back to the mile rather than go for a 1.25 miles.
That is some star power. And we also got the Japanese coming. We're going to get some international representation at Santa Anita.
Yeah, this is going to be probably one of the most elite foreign representations in recent Breeders' Cups for sure.
Well, I'm going to bring it back to a 2-year-old, and this is an Irish bred horse, No Name Metz, who returned off a 5.5 length win in the Tyro Stakes at Monmouth, and then came out to win the 5.5 furlong Rosie Stakes at Colonial by 3.25 lengths against 10 rivals this weekend. Now 3 for 4 with his lone loss coming at Royal Ascot in June. He won on debut in a stakes at Gulfstream, then earned a spot in the Norfolk Stakes at Royal Ascot's undercard, and then, didn't do too well. It was on soft going, but came back last weekend, won this race in dominant fashion. And, the interesting thing is the Rosie Stakes is a fairly young race. In 2019, the winner, 4-wheel drive, went on to win 2 races later, the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf. So maybe we'll see something similar with No Name Metz. And, his connections came out and said that they were feeling very confident. He does like the ground hard. So as they put it, we all know Santa Anita will be like a highway. So definitely keep an eye out for No Name Metz. I think he is an interesting contender in the Breeders' Cup going forward. What do y'all think about this horse?
Absolutely.
I mean, he's, like you said, he didn't do so well overseas, but now they're coming to him, and he's going to be on his home turf, and excellent gate speed. He's going to be definitely one of the ones to catch.
Kind of fun connections too with, the baseball tie-in as well with the Houston Astros.
Well, I'm going to leave that alone. I'll leave that alone. Not an Astros fan.
Right. I'm not either. All right. Well, that's all the time we have today for the roundtable. We'll be back next Tuesday to recap more stakes action. Of course, check us out on Thursday with our best bets and fades of the weekend on the TwinSpires jury. And head to TwinSpires.com or the TwinSpires app for a number of promos to help you win big at the racetrack this weekend as well. We'll see you then.